A driver hell-bent on carnage rammed a truck into reveling crowds in United States, New Orleans' famous Bourbon Street, turning the new year into a tragedy. Remember, this is a famous street which has a lot of clubs and pubs and is known for a busy time at this time of the year. The FBI, which has been probing the incident, is investigating a mass casualty event when a man drove a pickup truck into crowds, killing at least 15 people in the early hours of New Year's Day in New Orleans. The U.S. Army veteran Shamsuddin Jabbar injured another 35 people, including shooting 2 police officers who returned fire and killed him. Now, a lot of people are reacting it, including President-elect Donald Trump. He issued a statement condemning the attack and said his administration will do everything to support the investigation into this act of evil. He said, and I quote, "When I said that the criminals coming in are far worse than the criminals we have in our country, that statement was constantly refuted by Democrats and the fake news media, but it turned out to be true." For more, my colleague Canal and Bourbon reports. Take a look.
I'm not going to comment until I speak to the group later. I've spoken to every member of the agency, from the CIA to our national security team, to our FBI, NSC, and we're gathering all the, and I spent a lot of time with the government, with the mayor.
What was your reaction when you heard what happened?
Well, the reaction was one of anger and frustration.
The people of New Orleans are still in shock after a horrific attack on the streets of the French Quarter while they were just out to celebrate the start of the new year. A suspect now named as 42-year-old Shamsuddin Jabbar, a US citizen from Texas, has been killed, but not before he rammed his truck into crowds and shot at police. An ISIS flag was found in the vehicle, and the FBI says they're looking into a potential connection to terrorism, as well as saying they don't believe he acted alone. 2 IEDs, explosive devices, were found in the area, and as of early afternoon, the crime scene was still cordoned off. The investigation is ongoing, and the FBI has asked for the public's help to report anything suspicious that they have seen. The FBI also said the suspect was a US Army veteran who was honourably discharged. They've asked anyone who interacted with him in the last 72 hours to contact them with information. Well, Governor Jeff Landy also emphasised that this is a fluid process and law enforcement is, quote, hunting down the bad guys. Well, a college football game that was due to take place on Wednesday evening in New Orleans has been postponed until Thursday. Investigations continue with many unanswered questions as people begin to try and process these tragic events. Caroline Malone, NDTV, Washington.
And joining me for more on this, Natasha Israni live from New York and Huma Ansari live from Texas. Thank you both of you for joining us at this hour. Natasha, if I come to you, first we saw in Germany how a man plowed into a Christmas market, and now we're seeing a similar incident when a man drove a pickup truck in the New Year's Eve celebrations in New Orleans. Give us a sense of what happened exactly.
Yes, it is actually very ironic because the New Orleans police had known about these attacks in other countries, so it hadn't happened in New Orleans before, where a truck slams into crowds, and they saw potential for that happening in the crowded area of Bourbon Street, and it's very popular with tourists as well as people who visit the city in terms of pubs and musicians and all of that. So they had actually thought about it, and they were actually in the process of changing how they were going to stop stop access to some of those roads when there were a lot of people gathered. And that process which they had started, which was supposed to actually end in February next month, just before a massive football game called Super Bowl. And what happened with this truck and this attacker was that he was able to bypass a police car that was actually parked, which was blocking the road to pedestrians, but he was able to bypass that, go around that car, and then slam into people. And the death count has gone up now from 10 to 15 unfortunately, President Biden has come out and said, now made a statement this afternoon saying that investigators have told him that he was inspired potentially by Islamic State. Meanwhile, they're also looking, the investigators are also looking for what they consider to be three other accomplices of the attacker, likely a woman and two other men, who they say, according to camera footage, was seen planting potential improvised explosive devices in the French Quarter, two of which have already been diffused. So it's an ongoing investigation by the FBI, and they'll be looking to see the man more closely, including now reports coming in that the attacker had said that he had indicated in videos that he had a desire, quote unquote, to kill.
Right. Huma Ansari, the FBI is investigating this as an act of terror. Tell us more about what were the links behind, slapping these charges of terrorism in this case.
Well, according to the FBI, it was an intentional attack, and the initial investigations do show DNA and fingerprints from inside the truck, which were more than one person. So definitely it was something which was not done solely. It was an act where other people were involved. And the fact that the suspect chose, I wouldn't say they're not so popular, but they chose to go through, rent a car through Truro, so that locating them would be slightly more difficult than, as per the regular car rentals, more compared to the regular car rentals. Also, the fact that they were in an Airbnb and, things of this nature are kind of connecting to, are indicating towards a terror attack. And we can't take over the fact that the suspect was part of the army for almost a decade, on and off, as an IT, in a non-combative position, in an IT services position. And the video that's not now been taken off YouTube does indicate that this person had interest of definitely inflicting harm on people.
Right. Natasha, if you can give us a sense of the area where the attack happened. It is a very busy, street, and this is a very famous Bourbon Street where the attack happened. Is this why, the attacker knew that there will be a busy time of the year at this street? That is why probably the, attacker identified this area, as there were reports that he wanted to kill as many people as possible.
Absolutely. I've actually been in that area years ago when I was still new to this country. But I will say that area is where you go and visit. There are a lot of musicians, there are a lot of bars, there are a lot of clubs. There's a lot of history to that district as well. That is the district, the French Quarters, where everybody heads, not just the tourists, but also the locals. And the locals would have also been there that night. It was New Year's Eve, and this happened at about 3:15 in the morning. So 3:15 in the morning, the revelers, people bringing in the new year, were very much still there. So yes, this is really the kind of place which could be seen as a potential for an attack, given the density of people that were there. And the police were aware of this. And the interesting fact is that there were actually 400 police officers on the ground who were there. Even they didn't have any inkling of an attack, but they were just there because they knew this is a crowded place and this is New Year's Eve. And they have come out and said now, the New Orleans police, that they failed, that they had planned for these things after having seen attacks in other countries, Christmas markets around the world. They had planned for this, but unfortunately their plans were didn't want enough to protect the crowds gathered there.
Right. Huma Ansari, we are also being told that the suspect was not acting alone. There were other associates. Also tell us, give us a sense of background of this person, the accused, who was shot dead at the moment when the incident happened, but he also served in the army.
Yes, he did. And although he was born and raised in the US, 2 hours away from Houston in a place called Beaumont, Texas, his roots head back to Bangladesh. So, from Bangladeshi origin, this person was an IT specialist. And there are some, within the Houston community, there is a lot of information that is being shared that there was a DUI for this person in about around 2020. And he was meant to serve in the Navy 2024. He enrolled for a boot camp, but he was discharged because he did not show up on time. So that was the latest, his latest enrollment going back to the services. So, and then apart from being an IT professional, he was a real estate agent over here, quite, maybe a little bit known in the community, but he did real estate as well in the Houston community.
Right. Natasha, what kind of progress has the FBI made so far? They are, probing the ISIS angle, but what other details do they have at this moment?
Well, at the moment, they're really focusing on also trying to make sure that that area is safe and locked down, because there's a huge, as you mentioned in your report earlier, there was a huge game that was supposed to be held here, held in New Orleans on Wednesday, that has been postponed to Thursday, which is tomorrow, because of security concerns. And this is also the same place, with less than a mile away, that there's a big venue for a major football game, the National Football League game, which is in February. Super Bowl is one of America's biggest sporting events. So a lot of focus right now is on securing and making sure that they want any other accomplices. And which is why I mentioned that they are looking out for one woman and two men who they think might have been involved in supporting this attacker, but those confirmations haven't come yet. And they are also, other than the Islamic State, they are also still investigating whether he was inspired by any other terrorist groups. And another interesting report that just came in, just as we were speaking to, this is from the New York Times.
Right.
From the New York Times, the report is coming in that apparently the attacker had given an interview saying after he left the military that he was having a difficult time adjusting to civilian life, that some of the military jargon that used was also becoming irrelevant. So the different leads here, and more information to come in future days.
Certainly. Thank you so much, Natasha Israni and Huma Ansari, joining me at this hour. We will come back to you after certain reports come out. Thank you so much for giving us those details.